It was supposed to be a simple weekend sail, just a father and his young daughter escaping to the peace of the open water. But when Michael Tanner, 38, and his 9-year-old daughter Lila set out from a quiet marina in Northern California one crisp Saturday morning, no one imagined it would be the last time anyone would see them. For 12 years, Michael's wife, Grace Tanner, clung to hope, searching for answers. Now, more than a decade later, the painful mystery has finally unraveled, and the truth is more heartbreaking than she ever imagined. The morning of their trip, everything seemed normal. Michael, an experienced sailor and devoted father, had taken his boat, the Sparrow, out countless times. Friends recalled how excited Lila was to have her daddy weekend, just the two of them, watching the sunset from the deck, eating peanut butter sandwiches under the stars. But when they failed to return by Sunday evening, and no word came in the days that followed, panic set in. Coast Guard patrols were launched. Helicopters scoured the ocean. Flyers went up in every harbor along the Pacific coastline. But the Sparrow had vanished without a trace. No debris, no distress signal, no communication. Grace, devastated and confused, was thrust into a surreal nightmare. I kept thinking, he's just delayed. Maybe they're on an island. Maybe the radio's broken. Grace said in an interview years later, "You never think the love of your life and your child are just gone." Authorities eventually ruled it a likely accident at sea. The file was marked presumed drowned, but Grace never fully believed it. Michael was too careful, too prepared. "Something never sat right with me," she whispered. "I always believed there was more." For over a decade, Grace Tanner lived suspended in a place between grief and uncertainty. Each passing year without answers became heavier, not lighter. Birthdays passed. Holidays came and went, but the ache never dulled. She often said the hardest part wasn't the pain, it was the not knowing. She sold the family home, moved inland to avoid the coastlines that haunted her, and tried to rebuild. She threw herself into volunteer work with a marine rescue center in San Diego, using her story to help advocate for safety reforms and signal equipment on small vessels. Still, a quiet part of her always held hope, even when logic told her otherwise. Then came the call. A vessel had washed up on a remote beach near the Osa Peninsula of Costa Rica, sun-bleached, half-sunken, and nearly unrecognizable. A group of local fishermen spotted the wreckage lodged in the rocks after a rare storm had churned up debris from the ocean floor. When maritime authorities investigated, they located a corroded cereal plate near the stern. It was faint, but legible. Grace remembers the moment the Costa Rican consulate called her. "My knees just gave out. I thought it was a mistake. I thought, no, it can't be. After all this time." But it wasn't a mistake. 12 years after Michael and Lila vanished, the ocean had finally given back a piece of the story. When authorities boarded the partially submerged sailboat, they expected to find little, some sun-damaged gear, maybe a few rusted tools. But in the small cabin, under a warped floor panel, they discovered a sealed plastic bag, weather-worn but intact. Inside was a child's sneaker, Lila's, identified by the pink embroidery Grace had stitched in herself. There was also a photograph, faded, salt-warped, but unmistakably Grace and Lila on a beach, smiling. But it was the final item that changed everything. A waterproof journal bound in marine-grade rubber casing. It was Michael's. The entries were heartbreaking, spanning nearly 8 weeks. His neat handwriting grew increasingly erratic as the pages went on. The first few entries described excitement. Lila had been thrilled to see dolphins near the bow. They'd shared sandwiches, read books, and sang together under the stars. Then, chaos. One entry, dated 2 days after departure, read, "Heard a mayday from an unknown vessel. Against my better judgment, I responded. Shouldn't have trusted." What followed was a chilling tale. Michael had intercepted a distress signal on the emergency channel. He assumed it was a capsized boat. He changed course to help, but the mayday was a trap. He'd stumbled into the path of pirates, modern-day sea bandits who used fake distress calls to ambush passing vessels. They boarded the Sparrow, tied Michael up, threatened Lila, and stripped the boat of electronics, fuel, and supplies. They destroyed the radio and GPS to make sure he couldn't call for help. Then, leaving him and his daughter stranded, they disappeared into the horizon. They laughed, said we wouldn't last a week, said no one would come. I tried to fix the radio. Couldn't. Tried to build a signal flare. Failed. With no way to call for rescue, no propulsion, and no working navigation tools, Michael was at the mercy of the tides. They drifted for days. Lila's scared. I lie to her. Tell her we're on an adventure. I cry at night when she sleeps. Eventually, the journal notes, they spotted land. A small, uninhabited island or cay somewhere off the Central American coast. He managed to use the damaged sail and ocean currents to beach the vessel on a narrow shore. We have water from rain. We fish with a shoelace and a safety pin. Lila sings to the birds. She doesn't cry anymore. That scares me. As the entries continued, they painted a portrait of slow, tragic deterioration. Lila grew weaker. She suffered from sun exposure, malnutrition, and what Michael suspected was a bacterial infection from untreated water they found in a rock pool. She's burning up. No meds. Nothing to cool her. I beg God. I beg him. Please don't take her. Then, finally, the journal reaches its most devastating point. Lila passed this morning. She was sleeping. I held her through the night. She didn't wake up. I dug with my hands. There was no coffin, no dress. Just a father, broken. I carved her name in the stone. Michael buried his daughter beneath a tall palm tree near the rocky bluff. He marked it with coral, arranged into a heart. The final pages are barely legible. I don't have the strength anymore. I want this to be found. If you're reading this, tell Grace I loved her every moment. Tell her I never stopped trying. Tell her our girl was brave. And then, silence. Grace traveled to Costa Rica days later. With the help of local officials and marine researchers, she was taken to the site of the wreckage, now hauled to a private harbor. The boat was beyond repair, but still unmistakably hers. They followed the coordinates detailed in Michael's journal and discovered the resting place of Lila Tanner. There, shaded by the palm tree and covered in moss, was the coral heart. The makeshift grave remained undisturbed. I fell to my knees, Grace said. I kissed the dirt where my daughter lay. I felt closer to her than I had in 12 years. She brought soil from the grave home in a small urn. The journal now rests in a memory box alongside the photograph and the tiny pink shoe. While the mystery has been solved, closure remains elusive. Grace is now working with a nonprofit to create a floating memorial garden for lost-at-sea families. She speaks at grief counseling centers and has started writing a book tentatively titled The Wind Knows Their Names. I wanted to believe they were still out there, but I'm grateful I finally know. Michael didn't fail. He fought with everything he had. And our daughter died in love, not fear. In the end, the truth wasn't a rescue. It wasn't a miracle. But it was something even rarer. Answers, and a final testament of a father's love. A love that outlasted time, tragedy, and the unforgiving sea. According to the entries, shortly after setting sail, Michael had picked up a mayday call from another vessel, a boat carrying refugees in distress. He changed course to help, but instead of gratitude, he encountered danger. Pirates had used the distress signal as bait. They boarded the Sparrow, ransacked it, and threatened to kill Michael and Lila unless they handed over everything of value. But Michael fought back. One journal entry, dated 3 days after the attack, read, "They left us, but not before destroying the comms and taking our lifeboat. Lila's scared. I'm scared too. But I have to protect her." Stranded at sea with a damaged boat, limited supplies, and no way to call for help, Michael did everything he could to keep Lila safe. They drifted for days, eventually washing up on a remote, uninhabited islet off the coast of Central America. They survived there for weeks, until Lila fell ill. Michael wrote of watching her fade, helpless against infection and starvation. "She's asleep more than she's awake now. I hold her every night. I sing to her. I pray. Oh God, I pray." The final entry came 2 months later. "Lila is gone. I buried her by the tallest palm. I carved her name into the stone. I can't go on, but I need someone to find this, so Grace will know. I loved you. I never stopped trying." Grace received the journal and personal effects in a sealed cardboard box, weathered, water-stained, and shipped with care by Costa Rican authorities who knew they were not simply sending items. They were delivering answers. They were delivering a past long lost to the tides. Inside were fragments of a life frozen in time. A child's sun-bleached sandal, a photo of 3 smiling faces, Grace, Michael, and Lila, taken on their last beach vacation, and of course, the journal. It was thick, marine-grade, sealed carefully, as if Michael knew someday it might be all she had left of him. As she opened the journal, her hands trembled. The ink had smudged in some places, but Michael's neat handwriting was still there, clear enough to guide her through his last 2 months. Each word was a window into his final acts of love. "For 12 years, I didn't know if they suffered, if they were afraid. Now I know. And somehow, that hurts more," Grace said, tears slipping down her cheeks. But in the same breath, she admitted she finally had something else. Truth. Painful as it was, knowing they hadn't simply disappeared, that they hadn't abandoned her or vanished in silence, brought a strange kind of peace. He didn't just vanish. He fought. He tried. He saved her from worse. And he loved her. He loved us. Until the very end. With the help of the U.S. Embassy, local rescue teams, and a Costa Rican pastor who had heard of Grace's story on the radio, arrangements were made for her to visit the island detailed in the journal. It was a small, rocky spit of land rarely used by commercial vessels. Remote, forgotten, untouched. She arrived by boat at dawn. As she stepped onto the island, the warm breeze wrapped around her like a ghostly embrace. She could almost feel Michael and Lila in the air, like their spirits had been waiting for her. A guide walked her up the rocky incline where the journal described the burial site. And then she saw it. Beneath a bowed palm tree, nestled between 2 large stones, was the grave. Time and wind had taken their toll, but the name Lila remained carved in the stone with heartbreaking clarity. Around it, seashells and coral pieces had been arranged into the shape of a heart. Some had crumbled, but many remained, proof that Michael had made something beautiful for his daughter, even in death. Grace collapsed to her knees. She ran her fingers over Lila's name, tracing each letter, whispering memories through choked sobs. She laid a bouquet of wildflowers she had brought from home, yellow tulips, Lila's favorite, beside the stone. "I'm here, baby," she whispered. "I found you." In the days that followed, Grace worked with a forensic team and marine authorities to respectfully exhume Lila's remains. With great care and ceremony, her daughter was placed into a specially prepared container, one that would travel with Grace back to California. "It felt like I was carrying her home in my arms again," she said. "Not the way I ever imagined, but still, finally, home." Michael's remains were never recovered. Experts believe he may have gone into the water himself, perhaps knowing he would not survive, and allowing nature to take him on his own terms. His final entry seemed to suggest a man preparing for the end, not with fear, but with resolve. Grace had a symbolic urn made for him, filled with sand from the island, fragments of coral from Lila's grave, and pages from the journal. She would bury it beside their daughter, in a quiet family cemetery in Santa Barbara. "I may not have his body, but I have his words. I have his love. And I have the truth." Upon her return to the States, Grace was met with overwhelming support. The local church where Michael had once sung during services held a memorial service for father and daughter. Hundreds attended, neighbors, friends, strangers who'd followed the story in the news. Photos of the family were displayed next to quotes from Michael's journal. The crowd sang Amazing Grace, and a children's choir performed You Are My Sunshine, Lila's favorite song. At the end of the service, Grace spoke to the crowd. For 12 years, I was trapped in limbo. Now, I stand here with sorrow, yes, but also with gratitude. I know now how fiercely my husband fought for our daughter. I know they were together until the end, and I know their love never left me. After the service, she announced the formation of the Sparrow Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to improving emergency response and communication systems for small watercraft. The foundation will also provide support for families of missing persons at sea, ensuring no one else has to endure 12 years of silence. Michael named the boat the Sparrow because of that Bible verse. Not one sparrow falls to the ground outside the Father's care. Now I understand. Not one of them was ever truly lost. Grace has since returned to the island once more, this time with a film crew documenting her story to raise awareness for the dangers of piracy, rescue protocol failures, and the emotional toll on families left behind. She sits in her garden often, reading the journal. Her favorite entry is the one where Michael wrote, "She laughed today. She told me she wants to be a captain when she grows up. I told her she already is. She's captain of my heart." That page, though smudged, is laminated and framed in her home. Love didn't end with the storm. It didn't drown or drift away. It lived on, through words, through memory, through the unwavering strength of a widow who never stopped believing. And now, finally, she knows. They weren't lost. They were waiting to be found. Grace has since written a memoir about the ordeal titled The Sparrow's Song, named after the boat that carried her family into the unknown. The story of Michael and Lila has touched people worldwide. Sailors have raised flags in their honor. Parents have lit candles. Grace has established a fund in Lila's name to support rescue efforts and safer passage for at-risk families at sea. My daughter died far from home. My husband died trying to save her. But now, they've come back to me. And I will carry their story for the rest of my life.